everyone. Thanks for joining me here on Mom Squad. I'm Maureen Kyle. Today we are celebrating dads. We are just ahead of Father's Day weekend. One dad, Trey Kennedy, pointed out on TikTok, sometimes this holiday doesn't get the same treatment as Mother's Day.
Is there something else? First breakfast in bed and a foot massage, you don't wrote me poems, and now more gifts, and I don't, just take it back.
Oh, you made Daddy a card, huh? Looks like you put in about as much time and effort into making this as I did making you.
What a start to Mother's Day weekend. Oh, I can't wait for the next 48 hours of surprises.
All right, we'll do a Father's Day lunch. 20 minutes. I gotta get back to the yard work.
I know he's kidding, but let's remember to at least have the kids draw a picture on Dad's card this Father's Day. Well, there are a lot of great things that dads teach their kids, but one of the most important lessons they can help teach their family is financial literacy. In today's episode, we talk with David Delisle, a money mindfulness expert and author of a children's graphic novel, The Golden Quest: Your Journey to a Richer Life. We discuss how to talk to your kids about money and how to cut out some of the shame and guilt from spending. David, thank you so much for joining us today on Mom Squad. Money is always a hot topic in every household. I think we're all trying to teach our kids the importance of money and the value of a dollar. And I'm so excited to dive into the money mindfulness and everything. But what was it that drew you to focusing on teaching kids financial literacy?
Well, so I'm a dad, so I've got two young boys, and right now they're like 12 and 14, going on 15. So they're a little bit older. But when I started this whole journey, it was really just to teach them and pass on those lessons. And I was looking around and realized they loved graphic novels, and there just wasn't anything out there in a graphic novel format that taught kids about money. So it just made so much sense to marry those two together.
What was your main focus? What do you think the main message is in your book?
So for sure, and this is something that isn't talked about enough, is this idea of money mindfulness and what I call, your awesome stuff, and really understanding your why. Because that is the piece where if you don't actually understand why you want money, and the only thing you've ever been taught is more, then there was no end to that chase. You're constantly chasing more because it's all you know. Whereas that why really, really breaks that up. And so for me, that money mindfulness, finding your why, asking your kids, what is your awesome stuff? And then teaching them how to actually choose between or understand what that means. So important.
I love it. I love it because you're right. I mean, we've been taught all of our lives, just accumulate. But for what? You hear of these people who, they pass away with millions of dollars in the bank. How do you start to find your why? What is the first step, especially when you're talking maybe as a family, to figure out what that why is?
Yeah, and it's tricky. And that's why, I was just in a class just recently and kids were asking, what if I don't know? Or how do I know it's my awesome stuff? Or know that it's my why? And the thing is, it doesn't matter if you don't get it right. That's the whole point. There is no right to this question. And it is a bit of a journey and it will constantly evolve. But the first step is that awareness. So I start with kids by just taking a deep breath and thinking about things. Because usually when you ask them, what's your favorite thing or what's your stuff or what's your awesome stuff, it's everything. But then when you get them to just pause, like you as a parent, your kids have their favorite things. And so once you identify those favorite things, and then talk to them about how does that make you feel? What is your favorite thing in your room? If you could only grab one thing, what would it be? And then they start comparing everything to that. And then it will evolve. The other day I was in a park with my younger son, and it was a new park he discovered. He was running around, he's having so much fun and looking around. And he looked at me and he's like, Dad, a lot of times it's the stuff we take for granted that is the most fun or brings us the most joy. I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but I mean, it's just that awareness and looking around that most of us aren't doing all the time.
Right. So do you think, because I have little kids and I notice that they love even just the free things in life. And when I talk to them about what was your favorite part of, summer, they talk about the simple things. Is it the parents? Are we the ones putting pressure on getting them the latest and greatest of whatever it is, fad that's going around, the best shoes, the best backpack, water bottles that seem to be very popular right now?
For sure. It's so tricky because as parents, we want to give our kids everything. And so we do give them everything. And as you mentioned, it's usually not those big things. Like when I talk to kids, it's playing with their friends. It's they want to spend time with their parents. They don't want the thing. They want to connect and spend time and laugh and play. And so it really is noticing those things and not trying to just give them more, or even just recognizing choice. So we could get you this thing, or we could, like, what would you rather? Would you rather have a whole bunch of friends over and we order pizza in, or would you like to, get this toy that you're bad asking for? And as they understand choice a lot, like, it's really, really interesting. Kids get it quicker than parents.
Right. Now, in doing my homework with your information here, you talk about savers and spenders and how we've always been categorized as either a saver or a spender, but there's a lot of gray area instead. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so I've been noticing just how much shame there is around money. Like, we really shame our kids, our friends, our colleagues. There's just so much shame and judgment and insecurity around money. And I'd love to sort of start to have more conversations so we can break that narrative. And I really notice it with my older son, because I've been, like, I talk about money, I talk about saving, I'm a saver, but we really have this narrative that savers are good, spenders are bad. My older son's a spender, and it doesn't matter what I teach him or what I talk to him about, he's always going to be a spender. He's one of those kids where if you give him $20 to go to the store, he'll spend $20. If you give him $40, he'll spend $40. And so instead of shaming him, for me, I'd rather accept that's who he is, work within that, because most of us are actually spenders in this world, and then build the habits around that. So if he saves first, which is an amazing habit, and instead of me giving him the $20, I give him 18, and that 20 is already saved and invested and growing, and he could spend the 18 guilt-free, it's a much better life. And still he's set up for, financial independence. He's still making good financial decisions. He still is creating those savings that we all talk about, but without the shame.
I love it. So a lot of young teens are probably going to get their first summer jobs this summer as we're headed into those months. Or, you have an older teen who now might be going away to college. And so that method of teaching them to save is going to be very important. So what do you think, you as a dad, what would you do to sit down at the beginning of the summer before that job starts? How do you teach them how much to save, how much to spend, and set up that model?
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would start a little bit sooner so they start learning some of these skills and having some of that autonomy. But the big thing is that saving first is a really key element. Like, we've heard it over and over again, but it really is so, so important. And that's like even my older son, like I said, he's a spender, so he's worried about money. He's like, Dad, I'm like, am I never going to have enough money? Am I going to always have problems with saving? I don't want him to have that stress or that worry. I want it to be really simple for him. And by automating your savings, it will be. So with those teenage kids, as they go off, if you just develop that habit, that 10 or 20% of everything that comes in automatically gets saved, that's it. That habit will carry on with them. And showing the importance of that habit is all these things like compound growth and how to grow, and thinking of your money, earning money, not on how much you can spend. It really does make a difference, but really creating that habit for them and then talking to them. If we had that habit when we were in our 20s, I mean, we would be well on achieving retirement into our 40s, and our life would have so much more freedom.
Coming up, the big mistake I'm making when I'm talking to my kids about what we can afford and what we can't. Maybe you're saying the same thing. David tells us how to discuss finances as a family and with our friends. But before we take a break, did you know Father's Day wasn't recognized as an official holiday until 1972? It's been celebrated since 1908, and states celebrated with commemorations. But it was President Richard Nixon that signed Public Law 92-278, making Father's Day a nationally recognized holiday. And according to the website Statista, Americans spend an average of $20 billion on Dad. The most popular gifts are clothing and special outing gear. But we still spend less on Dad than we do Mom. Americans spend $31.7 billion on Mother's Day. Welcome back. One of the best lessons any parent can teach their kids is financial literacy. Today we are talking to money mindfulness expert, author, and father of two, David Delisle, about how to instill positive ways to think about money and how to talk about finances as a family. During our discussion, I had to admit I probably used the wrong phrases in front of my kids. Take a look. You talk about loud family budgeting. What does that mean? Because you just mentioned we should be starting all of these habits when they're much younger. How do you get the kids involved in as young kids and then in the family decisions?
Yeah, so with young kids, I mean, I'll just start, I'll get up to law budgeting in a moment, but with the young kids, like you're mentioning, even with your 5-year-old, you can start teaching kids at such an early age. And all it is just having conversation. So right now, we don't tell kids how much things cost. And a 5-year-old might not understand the value of a dollar, but they do have their own currency. Like my boys, their currency was chocolate bars, Lego sets. They love that when they're younger. So I could tell them how much something would cost in terms of chocolate bars and Lego sets. So that teddy bear might cost 10 chocolate bars. That bike might cost 3 Lego sets. And they could start understanding the value of money and seeing, you know, what those choices they could be making instead. So that's really starting to have that conversation and letting them know what things cost. And then that leads a little bit into this loud budgeting phase right now, where people are talking about it, because basically all loud budgeting is talking to people and letting them know you have a budget, letting them know about your finances. So if someone wants you to come out for drinks, you might say, oh, I'd love to come out, but it's just, I'm trying to save right now, or it's not in my budget. Could we do this instead? Or do you mind if I come out, but you know, I'm not planning on spending any money when I come out. I'll just join you guys. And just being a little bit more vulnerable and letting people know what your finances are a little bit more, just a little bit more transparency. Whereas right now, we just don't want to tell people we can't afford something.
Yeah. With kids, I know just personally, I kind of wonder, you know, going back to even the guilt of spending and saving, you know, and teaching them needs versus wants. And I'm always wondering if I'm using the right language, because sometimes I tell them, well, we don't have the money for that. Or we, you know, I probably do have it in the bank, but I want to say, well, we don't have the money for, you know, 5 more stuffed animals. But I don't want them to ever feel guilty or insecure about finances. What kind of language do you recommend that we use when we're talking to kids about that kind of stuff, like whether we have the money for it or not?
Yeah, it's so crazy. And that's why this is something I'm so passionate about and love so much, because it's all these just simple little things, like how we say something that is going to have a massive impact on our kids. So if we tell them we can't afford it, they do believe you can't afford that 85-cent Slurpee. Like they do believe that. And then they think, well, why can't we afford it? Do my parents not have any money? And are we poor? Does that make me a bad person? And so that's why I really try to shift away from parents getting into a discussion with kids about what we can and can't afford, and just talking about things in terms of choice a little bit more. And that brings you back to this idea of the awesome stuff. So with that same child who wants something, if they understand what's really important to them and you ask them, is that your awesome stuff? That child can pause and reflect. And you'll see kids, you know, pleading for that ice cream at the store and then being asked, is that your awesome stuff? And looking at it and putting it down, because they know what's really important to them or not. So it's not that you can't afford it. It's that we're all making choices. And when they understand what those choices might be, it'll make more sense to them. And that will carry on through adulthood. And they'll start seeing, okay, this is what is important to me. This is what's important to us as a family. And yeah, it's so interesting. But as much as you can, don't say you can't afford it. If anything, if you're not asking, is that your awesome stuff? Let them know, you know, I'd rather spend our money on this, or this is what we choose instead, or this is what we as a family prioritize.
David, if you had one thing that you would recommend families do today, just sit down, and maybe they haven't been talking about money, maybe they haven't been talking about budgeting, what do you think is the one thing every family should do immediately?
For sure, number one, talk to your kids about money. And it doesn't matter if you don't have the answers. Like, you can tell your kids, I never learned this when I was a kid. I don't understand investing. I spend more than I should. Have those conversations, let them know, and then seek help for it. So be like, hey, why don't we find some people who maybe could help us with this? Or why don't we read a book and learn about, different ways that people save or invest or learn about compound growth. And it can be so much easier than we think. And that's even with my graphic novel. I mean, it's written for kids, but really it was written for adults. So I really encourage parents, if you can, read it with your kids, and it will stimulate conversations. And they're open-ended conversations. It's not, this is what you should or shouldn't do. It's, hey, let's start having a conversation. What is your awesome stuff? Hey, what about saving? How much do you guys save? Do you save to buy something, or do you save to have that money grow and create financial freedom? And just start having these conversations. It really is as simple as that. And that'll eliminate all the shame and allow us to start having more and more conversations about money.
Yeah. Where can we find your book?
So the book, it's called The Golden Quest. And so you can find it on Amazon or bookstores. So just search for The Golden Quest. Or you can come to my website directly, which is theawesomestuff.com. And you can find me and all my information there as well.
Awesome. David, we have some summer reading to do by the pool, and we're going to save so much money.
And it's an easy read. It's a fun read.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much. This was such great advice. And of course, I think we all want to just make smarter money moves. So we appreciate the mindfulness aspect of this.
Thanks so much, Maureen.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Coming up, our resident super dad, Matt Wintz, tells us what dads don't want for Father's Day. You won't want to miss it. Some dads are easy to buy for, especially if they're a golf lover, grill master, or fishing enthusiast. But if you have a hard to shop for dad in your life, there's a lot of room for error. We enlisted the help of our resident super dad of 4, Matt Wintz, to show us what to leave off the gift idea list.
It's one of the most magical times of the year. Yes, the days leading up to Father's Day. And I know you're probably stressing about a gift for the man that has everything. And it's tough when he says things like I say to my kids, I don't need anything this year. Just being your dad is my gift. But he probably still expects something for those hours spent folding laundry, giving baths, and fixing things. But beware, there are some gifts to avoid, and I'm here to help you out. First on the list, shaving kits. Dads have been shaving on their own for years, and they don't like change. You know that old rusty tool that he has that he won't replace? It's because it still works. Same with your shaving equipment. Just don't do it. Dad's fine. Second up, cologne. Dads are just fine with the way they smell. Personally, I enjoy the smell of hard work and perseverance, and I don't want some fruity liquid to change that. Avoid cologne as a gift for Father's Day. You're probably thinking, well, what's left to get Dad? Well, how about a tie? Nope. Have you seen Dad's tie rack? Check the dust on some of those ties. They haven't been worked in years or worn in years. You're not going to break the mold with that argyle pattern that you thought was unique. Avoid ties at all costs. Another item to avoid, well, underwear. No explanation needed. Just don't. You'll also want to avoid gift cards. You probably borrowed that money from Dad anyway to get him a gift, and if you get a gift card, you're simply just funneling and redirecting his money, telling him where to spend it. You also know they're not very personal, so avoid gift cards. One final Father's Day fail is a book on exercise or diet. As I tell my kids, Dad's just storing up fat for the winter like squirrels do. That's usually followed by an hour presentation on how metabolism slows as you get older, which at what point I've kind of lost them. Either way, Dad is working on maintaining that fit, athletic former self, and he does not need books on diet or exercise. Please. Hopefully, this helps you avoid disaster on Father's Day. Think about things like experiences or something creative to remind him of how lucky he is to be raising wonderful kids. I hope this helps avoid pitfalls on this Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of our fathers out there, and to the kids, I hope they, well, got you a good gift.
Thank you, Matt. Always great to get his expertise as a dad. To all of you wonderful fathers out there, we appreciate the impact that you're having on your kids' lives. We hope you have a great Father's Day weekend. Thanks to all of you for joining me here on Mom Squad. You can connect with us on Facebook, Mom Squad with Maureen Kyle, or on Instagram at Mom Squad Show. If you've missed an episode, we have the Mom Squad YouTube channel with all of our full episodes. We'll see you right back here next time.